Hi, I'm Kiran Trace. Welcome to part 2 of how each avatar moves with money, honey. Hi, I'm Kiran Trace. Welcome to Humans Decoded, a story of hobbits, fairies, elves, dwarfs, gnomes, and humans. If you get lost at any point, there is a deep dive on all the different avatars in episode 1. It includes notes. Thank you for joining us in a fun little chat about the vast potential of our human makeup. I'm here with Cami again. Leela's having some travel time, and we have so much to say about avatars and money. We had to make a part 2. So it's me and Cam on the mic. Hello, Miss Cami.
Hi, just us squirrel friends hanging out in the studio, our virtual studio, with all of our decoders.
Hi, decoders. I hope you had fun listening in to abundance, avatars, money. We started with fairies and elves last week.
Yeah, so let's hear all about the hobbits.
Okay. Now, those of you that are binging, feel free to forward 30 seconds. I'm going to just put a quick recap. Last week we talked about abundance, which is where money comes from. And you're not actually trading your time for money. If you look a little closer, there is money flowing in numerous ways. And it's an energetic flow. And what that looks like practically is maybe there's an inheritance. Maybe there was a collective pool of friends jumping in for an investment that really paid off. Maybe when you were quite young in college or teenager, you invested a bit of money and then ended up living off of it. Or smaller ways of just like a lottery win or a tax refund or a pool of money that just shows up. Like money flows, and the reason it's flowing is it's energetic. And the energy of that money we point to as an abundant field. And what that means is this field, so it's the deeper dimension of this moment, has this capacity to manifest any form or to express as any form. And so the short version of that is if there's an infinite field of energy that creates every single thing in the world, then the creation of everything in the world is by definition abundance. It's creation of anything. That's abundance. And there's not a separate you mentally grasping that and then harnessing it. What there is an awareness, listening to my words. And in that awareness, and we talk about this every single week in the podcast, listening to the authentic rhythms, the authentic you, and your authentic desires, and what is authentically your pace through the world, or projects you like to do, or ways you like to work, or ways you want to communicate. And the more we can hear that authentic voice and express it, then the more we are in alignment with this infinite field expressing. And if you're aligned with the infinite field, it will organically express to meet all your authentic desires. It will not express to meet the desires of your mind, because that's an illusional story that's moving against reality. And it won't align to express your control patterns, things from fear, things from not safe or not worthy, or we call these the belief systems or these baggages. The baggage we're carrying around doesn't get to create the next moment. It's not that powerful. It's illusionary.
Thank God, yeah.
Thank God. So, okay. What we're looking at is each hobbit and their aligned rhythm with money. Hobbits have this really beautiful shape. Like the other avatars we've talked about, fairies and elves, it's totally unique, but totally magical. Okay. Generally the shape is they can take pure nothing, and then boom, it becomes so much abundance. So they just make abundance out of nothing. the image I like to use for hobbits is like Jesus with the loaves and the fishes. You know, there's only like one loaf or two loaf, but there's 1,000 people to feed. And somehow it goes all the way around. That's the hobbit's rhythm for abundance. They are so tactile. We talk about them like they need to touch to love, like they need to feel their way through space, like actually sensually. They move by like walking something and touching something, and that starts to inform them. And they move slower, right? So they slower in comparison to a fairy who might move like a hummingbird, or an elf who might move like a flowing river, right? They're moving at this pace of this potter, you know, through material form. They got to walk it and touch it and taste it. So that's where that form comes from, right? So there's only two loaves, but then they start working with it and it suddenly becomes enough for all, you know?
It's funny, as soon as you started talking about hobbits, it felt like everything kind of slowed down and it's just like cozy. They have this like just delicious like way about them. And I totally see what you mean. I had a friend stay with me recently and she cut me up some vegetables and it was like some cucumber and some fennel and like sea salt. But the way she presented it made it feel like the most abundant, like luxurious thing that I've ever eaten. And I feel like only a hobbit kind of has that ability, like that tactile, like I've seen her put like 3 flowers together and they just look sumptuous, like in a way that I could never put them together. And also, I used to live with my lovely flatmate before I moved in here. And one of my favorite things was just to like observe her daily movements, because there was just such a like quiet nourishment inside of them. So she would like go and do her shopping in the nearby deli, get all her vegetables, and like come home, cook this amazing meal with like very simple ingredients, mostly vegetables because she was a vegetarian. And it just always felt like such a feast, like such a kind of like enrichment of the whole house. So yeah, that's just like so yummy about hobbits.
Yeah. The hobbits can look like they have very little income coming in, and that income becomes like so much luxurious over what we need abundance, like just plenty for
Mm-hmm.
all. My mother is a hobbit and she's, you know, a template of this. She I always say about my mom, like she earns a penny and spends it as if it was $1,000. Like it's wild. My mother had an incredibly low wage. She worked in the school. She was a teacher, but she fostered over a number of years, like something like 13 different kids. Like she fed
Wow.
them, housed them, you know, like
Wow.
she owns a very beautiful hobbity house. Like it's like a cabin, but it's beautiful. You know, it's like 5 bedrooms and 5 bathrooms and big decks and gorgeous tiered gardens into a natural landscape. But it's a very beautiful home in an expensive area, and it's in her name. She owns it, no mortgage. You know, like nobody who was ever in that house, and if you're ever in that house, there's a ton of people in there because you can imagine the number of grandchildren now, and like all of these kids that she fostered and their kids, and la la la. Like the it's always it's I don't know, it's an entire community coming and going out of there, and not any person going there would think there wasn't enough money. It's like the fridge is always full of food. The freezer is always full. There are blankets aplenty and beautiful silverware and beautiful hobbity plates. And like, it's just
Mm.
everything is full and
Mm.
beautifully cozy hobbity. You would never think this could be achieved on a teacher's salary. So she's just that kind of perfect template. And that's not to say that hobbits can't earn a lot of money, for sure. They're not limited to small amounts. Of course not. But what that is a different thing. It's called a capacity for money. And every single person has a different capacity. There are these hard wirings in some of us. So it's not aligned to the avatar you are. The amount of money that you make is a capacity. And there are some people that are just really identified with having very little. Like, that's who I am. I might not like it, but it's who I am. It's who my people are, And maybe I'm struggling to change it, but it's deeper in. It's like who I know myself to be. And it feels very, very uncomfortable if I walk into a luxury retreat center or a big, expensive country club. Like, I get itchy. I get uncomfortable. We're talking about a person whose personal capacity has a set point. Now, they can move that capacity. Mm-hmm. It's going to need a very skillful, very clear, very practical teaching or mentor for that, because these are hardwired. But other people then have different capacities. Like, I had a student who felt the most at home in like 108-room castle. Like,
I love that.
It was
story.
Wild. Everything about him just relaxed and eased, and he could just really hear himself in his natural environment. He was uncomfortable in things that are smaller than this enormous castle, because that's his inborn hardwired capacity. Now, again, we can change that, and it'd probably be quite good to change that, because he can't always go from castle to castle. Or maybe he can. What do I know? It's not my business. But capacity moves around. It takes very skilled mentorship to do it, but it can. So hobbits can earn a lot of income. But the same thing would happen if they earn $1 million a week. Every $1 million is going to feel like 100 million if it's a hobbit at the wheel. It's such a magic, right? Like, it's so gorgeous. And like, that's an incredibly nourishing kind of magic to pick up. And I would say, having a mother like that, I can do that.
Yes, that's true.
Now, that doesn't reflect my organic capacity. It's a trait I learned by being a child of a hobbit who has this aligned hobbit magic.
Oh, yum. Hobbits, come see me. I want to be surrounded by you too.
Every one of the avatars is magic. And we want the whole fellowship, right? We want to be with the entire fellowship.
Yeah, we're all good for each other. So moving on to gnomes, what's the tea on the gnomes?
The tea on the gnomes is gnomes are very, very, very good with money. They make they make smart investment choices that are shrewd business decisions. Even just like, like, you're just a household. You don't own a business, say, as a gnome, but you're still making really shrewd, excellent business decisions around how you're keeping your house, or how the house was purchased, or how your loan goes through. When we think of that gnome rhythm, we're talking about this real deep dive, and they want very specific, very detailed, a 360 full view. Right? So that's the rhythm. That's that energetic rhythm of the gnome, right? They're diving into that energy flow of the infinite, right? And they're listening for very, very specific cues. And they want this 360 detailed, like, they want to see the full diamond pattern in the energy flow, right? It's deep. It's very slow. They're looking for this whole movement. So then that's the reflection of money for them. So a gnome is often going to have multiple assets, likely through collections, really valuable, beautiful collections. That might be artwork, that might be coin collections, maybe it's gold or gemstones, maybe both. The gnome is the one who's likely to have a really important musical collection, like original rights to that first, recording of Miles Davis's Blue or something. Like, that's
God,
the
imagine.
gnome. Right. Or they have like a collection of like the very first patents ever created in the United States, like really
Wow.
valuable collections of important cultural significance.
Okay,
Right.
so
Like,
they'll be there at the auctioneers, like the silent bidder. That's your gnome.
shrewd, smart, and considerably more resources than they appear to have. So to a gnome, it might not feel like that. To a gnome, they inside of themselves, it feels chaotic. It feels circular because they're spiral. Again, a gnome doesn't go A to B, and they're not circling in the surface the way a fairy does. It's a spiral move. Little bit here, little bit there, little bit here, little bit there. They're accumulating in this very nuanced, detailed 360 way. So inside of themselves, they feel quite scattered around financial choices or assets. It's not like they're sitting back going, I'm really shrewd. And like they're not inside. They're like, it was a little bit here and just a little bit there and a little bit, I don't know, but there's a steady, consistent, conventionally smart move with money. And by comparison to like a fairy who's not traditional, as you say, it's like chaotic. It's like, am I flying too close to the sun? I'm just like, boo, 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 boo. A gnome is just steady, consistent, collecting. And that consistency of that gnome is enormous amount of its abundance. Fairies going to just like, and I hunch throw everything on a lottery ticket, but then they're going to win everything, but then they'll spend it all. Yeah. And like, it just all happened inside of a week. Yeah. Up, down, up, down, up, down. Comparatively, that gnome is just it's moving very slowly and very steady. It's not like the rights to this original patent just showed up, right? It could take 5 years to get all the signatories that were on that patent, like to sign off on it, or I don't know, whatever it is, right? Like it's this wisdom and patience and thoroughness, and it's the assets accruing that equal that abundance for those gnomes. And on the surface, you just never know it when you're walking with a gnome, but they got it. They got it together. they got their own little rhythm and flow with abundance.
One of my really good pals is a gnome, and he totally doesn't give the impression that he's good with finances. And he's got this like absolutely gorgeous collection of pianos because he's a musician. So I don't know how much they're worth, but probably a lot, even though they're just like hanging out in his living room. And we went shopping for his birthday, and he just like dropped like $200 in a perfume because it's like super sensual and it's delicious for him. And now that I think about it, he appears very laissez-faire, but actually he's always grinding. Like he's always got a ton of projects on the go. So speaking of the grind, I always love hearing about dwarves and money and their treasure and the hustle and their non-conformity. Like, I just feel like it's always so fun to talk about the dwarves.
Yeah. So dwarves have that. We talk about dwarves. These are strong warrior clan, resilient kind of beings. We talk about a dwarf being like a Fred Flintstone, like bang, 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 bang. I don't know if you guys remember Fred Flintstone and his clan. But, like in the Lord of the Rings, they're under the mountain. They're digging and digging and digging for gold in the mountains. And for dwarves, like once they get going, they never stop. Like they're so resilient. So there must be a good reason to get going. And one of the best reasons is it's because you're going to go for the gold. You're going for for that gold. And then they're going to go, right? Like the dwarf energy is slow, heavy, huge. It's rock, right? And so that's the flow they have with abundance. Heavy, huge, thick, right?
Oof.
So they're going to accumulate, and they do, a lot of wealth. Like stereotypically, we might think of like the mob boss, right? Which is like the money flows to them. And then any choice that they make with money is in order to make more money. Like,
Yes.
so for dwarf, it's like that boulder that rolls downhill and it picks up and picks up and picks up. It keeps rolling and rolling and rolling. You know, I think about, like, just even thinking about like the career fields where the dwarves are. It's like, you know, we know it's like construction, or it's like they own the quarry, or they're like, you know, or they're in the emergency rooms in the hospital. That's all the chiefs there. They've got to be dwarfs. That's who's thick enough and dense enough and heroic enough to manage those, you know, mini little war zones in there. And so if we look at that emergency room, the hospital, you know, the surgery chief in the emergency room. So they're a doctor. They go to work with this heavy service piece, very dwarf. And then they have like 5 side hustles on their off days, right? Like they're already making good money, but then they're going to have these great investments. And then the side business is like, he's also a tour guide on these extreme hikes, you know, and he has 6 of these hikes he does a year for these really exclusive clients, but then he also sells all the gear they need. Like he's a side hustle on a side hustle is that he outfits, you know, he does outfitting for these extreme people for these extreme hikes on the off days of his extreme, you know, emergency doctor. And PS, he's also a helicopter pilot, and he's on call in the community every time they need to bring someone, you know what I mean? Like that's the dwarf. His side hustles have side hustles.
Oh man, I love dwarves. And I feel like you just totally helped decode my dwarf friend. So I didn't realize, but he's kind of like a friendly mob boss because he's always working. But not only that, I found out he likes to double or triple book himself, and then on the day he'll just decide which job he wants the most. And just drop the other ones. He's super anti-establishment, so apparently he'll walk into a supermarket, take a block of cheese, put it in his pocket, and walk out because the cheese never belonged to the supermarket in the first place. Recently, I told him I want to do a car boot sale to get rid of all the junk that I don't want in my life anymore because I've moved it in from storage. And he was like, we will load that shit up in my van. I am amazing at selling. So I feel like, yes, he's the man for that job for sure. And he also helped me move into this flat. So there were 3 of us carrying 2 twin beds. And me and my friend took the elevator and we're like, hey, where's like Mike, our dwarf friend? And Mike just decided, because he can, to carry the bed single-handedly up 2 flights of stairs. He would have fit in the elevator, but he was like, nah. So, yeah, that's the dwarf.
Yeah, that's the dwarves. They love service. They love clan. They love helping the community. They're so strong mentally, physically. You know, dwarves are the frontline people. They're the firefighter, the National Guard, the Peace Corps, the military leaders. Like, they're amazing in a crisis. And that's the energy they carry. It's the energy you want in a crisis, PS, because they're so grounded, right? They're not losing track of the mission because of the crisis. That doesn't mean that they don't need a lot of emotional support, wisdom, and mentorships. Dwarfs really, really need help with the trauma because they're the ones on the front lines. And often, you know, these positions don't have nearly enough, you know, support for trauma. Anyway, sidebar, the dwarf system. They will make money from the front lines of the crisis. Total humanitarians, total like fuck the government, but they're like literally working for the government on the front lines, but they're running the security team as a side hustle. And, they're flying in the emergency crews to help the 400 refugees that are drowning in an ocean crossing, like that's who's doing it. It's the dwarves. They are making money in a win-win-win cycle, which isn't to say that we all aren't, but it's just, that's the dwarf magic, is like, they making money on top of money, and every single person is winning, not just the dwarf. Everyone is. And it's really right there in the front line of whatever that is. Even like the quarry owner, it's like, that's a front line. Like, we want those rocks and we want the cement, and we want it, right? And they're right there in the front lines of that boo, 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 boo. And they're going to make money on it and make money on it. And everybody here is going to win. That's the dwarf rhythm of abundance.
Oh, I love it. My dad, who's a dwarf, had a plant that used to dig into the earth to get really hot water out and then use the pressure to dehydrate fruit. And it just exploded. Luckily, no one died because it's like crazy amounts of pressure. And then he just pivoted instantly. And now he brokers for other people having plants, and it's just an amazing amount of resilience. And I feel like most people would be knocked over by like an explosion like that, but he was like, cool, next hustle, and just moved on.
Yes, yeah, here's an investment on that investment. And what? If I take the investment on the investment and turn it into an investment, it's an investment.
Exactly.
And then
it's
everybody
like,
can win.
Yeah, use all my contacts and, like up level.
Yeah.
And so we're going to end it with humans, which is funny because after the dwarves, we're like, let's go visit these very balanced, lovely, rule following individuals.
Well, the humans, human magic, human abundance magic is really sweet too. Okay, so we're talking about humans, decoders. We know we're talking about this really balanced energy, as Cami's saying, which is like, practically that means like quickly a human is super offended, but then so quickly re-regulate, hold nothing against you. So you don't know how they got offended, but they're so quickly re-regulated and bounced back. It's okay. That doesn't matter. And that's what balance means. You can really comfortably swing in either direction, and you can swing quite far in either direction quite easily. You're not getting stuck. So that human is like a wonderful soccer mom, like so all in on that role, like really supporting everybody on the team. And then they'll swing the other direction to be like, a woman for her husband on date night, like there's this really beautiful flow, like these swings from one end to the other. And, frankly, quite easygoing. And what that looks like in terms of abundance is luck. They seem lucky is practically what it means. So if you find yourself going, gosh, that person is so lucky, or, that's the third lottery that person's won this year, or, that luckiness, we're talking about a human in terms of abundance.
I feel like they're the people that are going to call up the radio contests. They're all the ones that are going to enter. And they're often at the economic level of middle class.
Yeah. That's a really good, that's balanced, right?
Right.
It could be upper
right.
middle class, middle class, upper middle class. That's a very balanced place. There are some billionaire humans, but like maybe the Kardashians. But, if we're thinking about billionaires, most of the world's billionaires are the empire building elves, right? The human is balanced because, like, for instance, they're uncomfortable if there's not enough money to be in the role, right? To be all in on the trend or all in on the expectation of how to show up. Like, that's really uncomfortable for a human. So it's unlikely that humans are going to be, working with a lot of poverty or living in poverty. It's rare. Just as the same, it's rare for them to be a billionaire. You know, they're balanced, which allows the swing. They're not sitting in one place, quite, you know, built into that one place. So if a human is a billionaire, mostly it's because they've inherited that money, like a Paris Hilton or Queen Elizabeth. But that nice, comfortable, balanced place is that energetic field, the one infinite field, right? So they're very much, you know, if you think of like the scales of justice or a balance beam or like the balance place on a teeter totter, right? Like that's how they are in the infinite field of all that energy. And then they're really conventional with their money. So, you know, conventional investments and conventional goals with money. They appreciate marrying money or being associated with affluent families because they like the display of comfort and security, right? That's a role. That's a collective agreement in the world that is valuable. So they like to be in that place, but they don't want to be that Vanderbilt person because it's uncomfortable. It's not balanced, right? Like it's too much attention. It's too hot. Like that's the elf, you know, like, but they want to be a part of that family or they want to, you know, like, yeah, I think there's like this really like beautiful movement of money flows in, money flows out, and it has to stay in that balanced flow. It can't be held in.
I feel like you just described my doctor friend that I went to school with. So we recently connected. We just kept bumping into each other at a coffee shop, even though we hadn't seen each other for 20 years. Sidebar. But I went to school with him, and he wasn't from one of the more affluent families in boarding school. So I think he's sort of middle or upper class. But there's just this sweet contentedness about him. And he's a doctor. He volunteers for his football team. He got married very young to a lawyer that he met at university. They're all Christian, so they have 3 kids. And there's just like a sweetness about him. And I think balance would be a really, really lovely way to describe him.
Yeah, and for humans, that conventional family shape is really nourishing. Like for an elf, it's like, are you kidding me? Skin me alive before I want. Like, what? You know, like same for a fairy, right? Absolutely. Yeah. But it's really nourishing if you're a human to have these conventional shapes and the conventional spending and earning patterns. It keeps them very in the balanced place in the flow of energy. And I would say that humans really love their children to be doctors, lawyers, dentists. It ensures that collective, you know, society views this as valuable. And if you're comfortably well off, it mirrors back that you were good as a parent, right? Like, oh, your child's studying to be a doctor or a lawyer. You must have been a good parent is the conventional rule of thumb. Right? Like, you know, so we're going to see with humans that they're more likely to be in marketing, to be in sales, or they themselves are pharmaceutical reps. But for our audience, which is mostly spiritual, you know, like spiritual seekers and advanced spiritual seekers or wellness leaders, it's mostly likely going to be like they run the spiritual juice bar. They have a great yoga studio that has a Pilates fusion because that's really on trend right now. They're good at sales too because they're really balanced and they understand the trends, right? They understand a kind of the simplicity inherent in conventionality. And so it makes them really good at sales, I would say. And that is that really balanced exchange of goods. You know, you're not good at sales if you are generally gouging people. You know, like you're not good at sales if you are undervaluing something, right? So they're good at seeing what the balance is.
Yeah, and when he was describing his family and his life to me, there just seemed like such a sweet contentedness about him. Like I feel like he's so comfortable inside of these roles or like, you know, doing the really conventional route.
Yeah, and I think an aligned human, you feel that. You feel there's a very it's really simple, the
Mm-hmm.
movement of money, right? So if you're in a human place and you're really struggling with money, we know that you're pretty out of authenticity. Because the more authentic you become, the more simple that, middle class, upper middle class, very comfortable to take care of your needs, your family needs, like that's like that will organically occur in alignment to that human system.
So, I think we've touched on all the avatars, and I love getting this really delicious overview of all of my friends. I feel like I understand them better. And also, it's always fun for me to revisit like fairy magic and spending and sort of, I guess, shaming myself less for, I guess, my finances looking different than to most people's.
Yeah, you're in alignment if your abundance is mirroring that. Like there's magic to be found in every one of these avatars, and it's when we're in harmony with the authentic flow of energy, and understanding how we each move through space is understanding how we move with abundance, and then we're not making things happen. We are leaning back and letting life organically, carry that energy, right? So an elf can lean back and they're flowing like a great river.
Mm.
A fairy can just lean back and then they're popping off these magical
Mm.
instant manifestations, as we
Like
say
little
it, right? Like
spurts. Yeah.
spurts of magic, just poof, 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 right? If you're a dwarf, you can just lean back and that boulder's rolling downhill and it's making it with every turn, more
Yeah.
money is being made, and more investments and more service and community, and
Mm.
everyone's winning. If you're a hobbit, you can just lean back and those two loaves feed the thousands,
Mm.
like all of these patterns have an organic expression when in alignment. And I think ultimately there can be a takeaway of like, if you're really struggling, let's take a look at your baggage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Let's take a look at what's being carried around that's not authentic, because that's where the block to your own organic abundance is. So take a look by taking the money class. Take a look by 7 Days to Free Your Mind. Take a look from any of our classes. There's a million tools in order to have this really good, practical mentorship. Obviously, you can work one-on-one with me. I tend to work more with the leaders who have their own audiences, but we have these wonderful coaches who are available, including the great Lula Suter, who's not with us today. But anyways, we have tons and tons and tons of tools. Go hit the website and breeze through, and maybe we'll see you in one of the classes soon.
Thanks, decoders. Love spending time with you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening. We obviously love hearing what you think. Your feedback helps us make a better show for you to listen to. So feel free to comment, and you can do it at Facebook, which is the Humans Decoded podcast. And if you're not on social, you can always email any questions to us at outreach@kirantrace.com. And thanks for listening. We love you.